Hello, welcome to the grammar review for the writing test for the Mass Comm department at North Greenville University. My name is Karen Campbell, and I'm going to go through a few of the things that will show up on the writing test that has to be taken by students in order to progress through the Mass Comm major. And fortunately for you, I'm the one who created the test, so I know exactly what's on it, and I'm going to try to help you so that you can do your very best and pass the test the first time around. But first, just a couple of reasons why, whether you're a broadcast major or a print media major, why copy editing is important. For example, if you're working for a television station and your job is to create the lower third, you might want to be sure that you spell education correctly. Or if you're in elementary school and you want to congratulate the spelling bee winners, you might want to spell congratulations correctly. And for that case, spelling bee as well. If you're going to tutor someone in any subject, any grade, it might be a good idea to spell the word tutor correctly. You might get a few more clients that way. And grammar errors make you look just plain silly. William is drifting into a comma. Now, for a little commercial break about the allot. This is a presentation that I found on hyperboleandahalf.blogspot.com, which I thought was a really cute way to help you remember that allot is two words. Allot, A-L-O-T, is not a word. However, it is an imaginary creature. So for example, if you care about an allot, you'll spell it A-L-O-T. If you care about something else a great deal, you will spell it A space L-O-T. You might have an allot of fire, an allot that's made of mist, an allot that's made of straw. Or perhaps you feel lonely and you want to tell your allot about it. Maybe your allot likes to charge or make a lot of noise. Perhaps you like one allot more than the other. Or your allot is better at swimming than Michael Phelps. Goodbye allot, and now we come to another grammar error that you see a lot. Get it? You're welcome. When you see yours being spelled Y-O-U-R, it's possessive. It means that the welcome belongs to someone. Hence, stick figure A is handing the welcome to stick figure B. I believe this is your welcome. If you want to say you're welcome in response to someone who says thank you, it would be spelled Y-O-U''R-E. So, what's going to be on the quiz? One thing is missing a comma after an introductory element. If you have something that introduces your sentence, the comma indicates that you need to take a pause in your thinking or speaking. You determined to get the job done, we worked all weekend. You need a comma there. The complete sentence is, we worked all weekend. Determined to get the job done is not a complete sentence. It's an introductory element to the complete sentence, so we need a comma. In German, nouns are always capitalized. Again, look here. You do not have two complete sentences. You have one, nouns are always capitalized. And then you have in German, which introduces the next part of the sentence and indicates that you want to pause in speaking. So put a comma there. Sometimes you need a comma when you have a compound sentence. The words I do may sound simple, comma, but they mean a life commitment. What is a compound sentence? A compound sentence is when you combine two complete sentences with what we call a coordinating conjunction. Now remember, on the grammar test, you're not going to be asked to identify what's a coordinating conjunction, what's a verb, what's a noun, what's a restrictive clause. We're not testing you on how well you can explain grammar. We want to know if you can determine what's the correct sentence and which one's not the correct sentence. So all you need to do is be able to look at a sentence and determine, is this correct or not? In fact, the way the questions will be presented on the test usually will give you 3 or 4 choices, and you look at them and pick either the choice that has the correct answer or the choice that has the incorrect answer. So make sure you read the question carefully to see if you're looking for the correct or the incorrect answer. In this case, we need a comma because the word but is a coordinating conjunction that joins the two sentences. Sometimes we use the wrong word. Words sound similar, but they don't have the exact same meaning. See if you can decide which word is correct in these sentences. Let's look at the first one. Paradise Lost contains many illusions or allusions to classical mythology. Well, illusions refers to something that's imaginary or invisible. Allusion is a reference. So which word do we want to put here? The second one, illusions. Let's look at the next sentence. Working at a computer all day often means being sedentary or sedate for long periods of time. Which word do we want in this sentence? If you said sedentary, you were right. Sedate refers to something that's very quiet and reserved. Sedentary means to sit for a long time. Therefore, sedentary is the correct answer. Back to those words that sound alike. Let's look at the cat and the monkey. The cat thinks that something can be a mute point. The monkey says no, it's a moot point. And the cat says, haha, moot, there's no way that's legit. But it actually is. Have you ever made this mistake? One thing you want to look at when you take the grammar test is commas. Anytime you see a comma, make sure that it needs to be there. So for this example, we have Marina, who was the president of the club, was first to speak. When you see commas around a phrase, what you want to do is take that phrase out and read what's there without the commas. So if we take it out, we have Marina was first to speak. Is that a complete sentence? Yes. Does the meaning of the sentence change? Marina, who was the president of the club, was first to speak. Or Marina was first to speak. The meaning is the same. So you do need the comma. If the words between the comma don't change the meaning of the sentence, leave the commas in. You can also memorize things about restrictive and non-restrictive elements, but frankly, why? Another error that you will see on the grammar exam is an unnecessary shift in tense. Make sure that your sentence is all written in the same tense. Can you see two tenses in the first sentence? Let's look at the verbs. The first verb we see is produce. That's in present tense. The next verb we see is affected. Is that in present tense? No, it's in past tense. They need to agree. So how would you fix this sentence? Either change the word affected to present tense or change the word produce to past tense. Whichever you do, they both need to be the same. We're actually not going to look at the second sentence because it's quite complicated and brings up a point of grammar that won't be on the test, so don't worry about that sentence for now. Here's another thing that shifts by accident sometimes, and that's a pronoun. Pronouns are words that take the places of nouns. So, when one first sees a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe, the pronoun in this case is one. That's in third person singular. Then you have you are impressed. You does not match up with one. You and one are not the same. One is in third person, you is in second person. They need to agree. So you could say, when you first see a painting, you are impressed. Or, when one first sees a painting, one is impressed. Either one would be grammatically correct. Is your brain getting full yet? We're almost there. Just a few more ideas to look at for the grammar test, the writing test. But before that, let's take a little break for grammar humor on the web, just to loosen you up and get you ready for a little bit more, because I understand grammar is not that fun to learn. The only way to make it even a little bit interesting is to throw a bit of humor into the mix. Some people just have to be snarky. Back to the stuff that's on the quiz. Sometimes you have the wrong tense or verb form. By the time Ian arrived, Jill died. This doesn't make any sense. It needs to be, by the time Ian arrived, Jill had died. Sometimes you have the wrong pronoun. In this case, we have the word myself. And this is a mistake that people make a lot. And the reason is they're trying to be formal and they overcorrect and they use the wrong word. You would never say, myself wanted to go. When you have two words together as a subject, in this case you have John and myself, make sure that both words are subject words. Myself is not a subject, it's an object. John and I wanted to go. Can you find the mistake in the next sentence? Look at the two nouns that are together, Aaron and I. When you were a child, your parents and teachers probably taught you to always say, Bobby and I, Susie and I, my mom and I, my friend and I. That's because if it's at the beginning of a sentence, Aaron and I won the blue ribbon, you would never say Aaron and me because me is an object, it's not a subject. But in this case, it is an object. The first place ribbon went to, how would you say that? Would you ever say the first place ribbon went to I? No, so the word I is incorrect. It needs to be me. Subjects agreeing with their verbs is very complicated, and you will see a lot of this on the grammar test. Be especially careful when you have a compound subject. So in the first example, a strategist behind the scenes creates the candidate's public image. What you need to look at is the subject. The word scenes is closest to the verb, but that's not the subject. The scenes are not creating anything. Who's creating? A strategist. Is that singular or plural? A strategist is singular. So, which verb form do we want? Creates. The answer to this one is a strategist behind the scenes creates the candidate's public image. Let's look at the next one. Each of these designs coordinates with the others. Each is almost always singular. So even though we have designs, which is plural, that is not the subject. The subject is each. Each refers to one. So which verb do we want? Coordinates with an S. Let's look at the next one. There are two main reasons that I want to become a lawyer. What is the subject? We're referring to two main reasons. Is that singular or plural? There's two of them, so it's plural. There are two main reasons. Next, my brothers or my sister comes. Wow. What do we do here? Because we have a compound subject that's both singular and plural. We have my brothers, which is plural, or my sister, which is singular. Which one do we use? In a case like this, you use the noun that is closest to the verb. So in this case, we have sister, and the answer is comes. Let's look at the last one. Johnson was one of the athletes who were disqualified. We look at it and we go, athletes were, that's the answer. But is athletes really the subject? The subject is Johnson. Johnson is singular, so the answer is was. If you find these to be tricky and you want some more practice, just Google subject-verb agreement and you'll find plenty of examples. Now let's look at another kind of agreement, the agreement between pronoun and antecedent. Each of the puppies thrived in its or their new home. Let me think about this. Go ahead and think about this for a minute. We saw a similar one in the previous slide. Each is singular. We're not talking about puppies, we're talking about each, which is one at a time. So the answer is its. Look at the next one. Either Jennifer or Selena will be asked to give their speech to the graduates. Because we have the word either, the subject is singular. Jennifer and Selena will not be giving a speech. Only one of them will, either Jennifer, singular, or Selena, singular. So the answer is her, since we know they're both women. This last sentence is about teams, and it's a collective noun. This is something that's very complicated and won't be on the grammar test, so don't worry about it. What I want you to remember is when you see team, most of the time it's singular. Even though it's made up of a bunch of people, it acts as a singular noun. So when you see team, use it. The team did something to itself. The other time that you would use collective nouns will be for boards and committees. So on the grammar test, if you see team, board, or committee, make sure that the pronoun used with it is it. If you want to know when a team, a board, a committee becomes they, go ahead and Google collective nouns and you'll find probably more information than you ever wanted to know. Okay, back to the test. All right, next. How do I know if I have too little in a sentence? And how can I tell if I have too much? If you have too little in the sentence, you have a sentence fragment. It's not a complete sentence. Can you find the sentence fragment in the first example? It is the second sentence. Anne helped bring on the French Revolution. There's no subject there. The word and didn't bring on the French Revolution. So this is a fragment. You can make it not a fragment by combining it with the previous sentence or giving it a subject. And she helped bring on the French Revolution. How about the next one? Well, this one looks like there's a verb because we have the word sitting. But in this case, sitting isn't acting as a verb. It's called a gerund, and it's behaving sort of as an adjective, which describes the aluminum boat. So I'm going to tell you something about the aluminum boat. What I'm telling you is that it's sitting on its trailer. The old aluminum boat sitting on its trailer, what? What's it doing? Why is it there? Why are you telling me about it? It's not a complete sentence. You could change it by saying, the old aluminum boat sitting on its trailer fell over. Another way to make this a complete sentence is just to put a verb in there. The old aluminum boat was sitting on its trailer. Look at the third one. We returned to the drugstore where we waited for our buddies. Where's the fragment? We returned to the drugstore looks like a complete sentence. But if you take where we waited for our buddies and put it separately, it's not a complete sentence because you have the word where there. If it was just we waited for our buddies, it would be complete. But we have where, and that makes it different. So you need to combine this with the previous sentence, and then you have a complete sentence. Next, let's look at comma splices. This is very simple. A comma splice is nothing other than using a comma to combine sentences. You have two complete sentences. You can't just put a comma. You need to put a comma and a word like and or but. Or you need to make it into two sentences. Can you see the comma splice in both of these examples? If you have trouble with comma splices, feel free to Google that as well. You'll find plenty of examples of that on the web. Now, let's look at when you add commas or don't need commas back to the restrictive and non-restrictive elements that we talked about earlier. Here we have a sentence and there's a phrase that's surrounded by commas. Let's take the phrase out and see if the sentence meaning changes at all. People who wanted to preserve wilderness areas opposed the plan to privatize national parks. If I take out the clause that's surrounded by commas, I have people opposed the plan to privatize national parks. The meaning has changed a little bit. In the original sentence, the people who wanted to oppose the plan were only the people who wanted to preserve wilderness areas. It wasn't all people. It was just a certain type of person, a certain category. So we actually need what's inside the commas. And since we need it, the commas should not be there. Take the commas out to indicate that we need what's in between the commas. Remember, If you see information surrounded by commas, it means that you can take out the information without changing the meaning of the sentence. Misplaced modifiers. Should I put a modifier at the beginning of a sentence, or would it be better in the middle, or at the end? Let's look at a couple of misplaced modifiers. In the first example, we have the hikers could see the eagles swooping and diving with binoculars. Goodness, this sounds like that eagles had little tiny binoculars around their necks while they were swooping and diving. So the modifier with binoculars is in the wrong place. The modifier with binoculars shouldn't be placed next to eagles. It needs to be over there with the hikers. So let's move it. With binoculars, the hikers could see the eagles swooping and diving. Much better, but not as cute. In the next one, looking down the sandy beach, people are tanning themselves. What? Who's looking down the sandy beach? The people who are tanning themselves? It's really unclear who's looking down the sandy beach. I think you want to say, looking down the sandy beach, I saw people tanning themselves. Whatever it is, the beach is not tanning and the people aren't looking, so something's in the wrong place. Next, let's look at parallelism. Parallelism in a sentence is making sure that all of your apples are the same and all of your, I don't know if that's a bomb or a cherry, but we'll call it a bomb. All of your bombs are the same. Those are just the verbs. Shane verbed, verbed, and verbed. Shane verbed, and verbed. Make sure that your verbs all match. So for example, Shane ate, which is past tense, wiped, which is past tense, and burped, which is past tense. That's a good sentence. Non-parallel structure is where you're mixing apples and bombs together, and that is bad. Shane ate, which is past tense, and wiped, which is past tense, and burping, which is a present participle. Oops, that's not a parallel sentence. When you're taking the grammar test, look for the options and make sure that you choose the one where all the verbs are in the same tense. Let's look at a couple of more things before we forget what's all on the test. Punctuation. There will be punctuation questions on the test. So, if I want a well done steak, I don't need a comma. But if I want to tell my steak that it did a good job, I do need a comma. Here's another case where someone left out a comma. Poor Rachel Ray is making a meal out of her family and her dog. Where would you put a comma to fix that sentence? A couple of more things about punctuation. When you have a direct quote, where do you put the punctuation? If I'm going to say, Tim Yoder blah 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 said, and I'm having that come before the quote, my comma goes after the word said, and then I have my quote. Notice where the period is. The final punctuation always goes inside the quote. So look at the second example. We have the quote first, and then we have the attribution, said Tim Yoder. The punctuation always goes inside when it's at the end of the quote. So make sure that you look and see where that comma is, and make sure it's always inside the quote when it comes at the end of the sentence. If you have a partial quote, it's the same thing. The punctuation, that period, goes inside the quotation marks. If you're quoting something and you leave a bit of material out, just use 3 dots or an ellipsis, that's what it's called, to indicate that you've taken some material out. If you're going to add some explanatory material to a quote to make it clearer, then you use brackets. Brackets say, I, the editor, added something to this quote that wasn't in there originally. Let's look at a couple of silly spelling errors as we end our grammar lecture. These are pictures that were found on the web. Fail. This concludes our lesson in grammar for the writing test at North Greenville University's Department of Mass Communication. I'm sure that you will do very well on the test. What I advise you to do is make sure that you understand how to use commas, when they're needed, when they're not. Make sure that you understand subject and verb agreement and parallelism and keeping all your verbs the same. Take a look at pronoun and antecedent agreement. That's another thing that people make mistakes on quite often. And Google anything you don't know. Also, you are more than welcome to come to my office, and I'm happy to go over any grammar points with you that I can. I don't promise that I'm a grammar expert, but I know when something's right and when something's wrong, and that's all we're asking you to do. We don't want you to explain what a restrictive clause is. We're not going to ask you to point out the verb. We just want you to be able to find a mistake or find a sentence that's correct. I know you're going to do a great job on the test, and let me know how you did because I really do want to know. Thanks for listening, and best of luck to you.